This episode of the Bloody Vegans podcast is brought to you by VegOne and the good folks over at the Vegan Society. VegOne is the multivitamin and mineral supplement designed by vegans for vegans. It was introduced back in 2005, updated in 2021 with an incredible new plastic-free package, and contains all of those key vitamins and minerals that everyone will tell you when you transition into a plant-based diet, into a vegan lifestyle, that you need to think about, and you absolutely do. So, what's in there? You've got B2, B6, B12, D3, iodine, selenium, and folic acid. So all of those kind of key ones you need to consider when you're starting out, or perhaps you've been here for some time. And it's all in a convenient once-a-day chewable form, which is super helpful, right? It's just £12.70 for 6 months worth, and they come in two amazing flavours. You've got orange and you've also got blackcurrant. Orange is a personal favourite of mine. I'm definitely team orange when it comes to VegOne. So if you'd like to know more and you're interested in picking up your 6 month supply, head over to thevegansociety.com, search for VegOne, and you can pick up some right there, delivered straight to your door. Enjoy the episode. Enjoy. Personal journeys into the world of veganism. I don't mind who goes first. Up to you.
We basically moved to the UK in 2016, which is when we moved in together. And so when we moved to the UK, we were already kind of like on our sustainability journey. And so we're starting to cut out kind of like animal ingredients. And so already we stopped buying any meat to cook at home back then. So we weren't fully vegetarian, we weren't vegan, we were just kind of like eating mostly plant-based, and that kind of like progressed more and more over the years. And then around 2 years after that, we went fully vegan. The thing about our journey that I think is a little bit different is that because on one side we had slowly already started having some of the vegan products. So like we had vegan cheese for a long time, oat milks and things like that. For us, I think the transition was really easy, but also I was having to follow basically what triggered it for me was that I was having to follow kind of like a nutritional plan to kind of like restart my, I don't remember what's the word, my metabolism. I was having some issues, and so I had a nutritional plan, and that plan had a lot of meat. And I was too shy to say anything when it was prescribed. And so for the 2 months before we went vegan, or like month and a half, I had to buy and cook meat, which I wasn't really used at doing. So I was still eating it maybe sometimes when going out or when being back at home. And I remember just going to the supermarket and having to buy these products and hating having to buy them, hating having to eat them, being super jealous of Giulio being able to eat the vegan products. And then in the end, I kind of like, because the nutritionist was in Italy, I needed to wait until I could go before I could ask them to make a vegan plan. And then I remember, I think 1 week, 10 days before I actually went back to Italy to meet with them, I just couldn't really do it anymore. I kind of like stopped following the plan and just started only following like the few days or the meals that were fully vegan. So I find it's a little bit funny because I think we wanted to go vegan for longer than we did. We felt a little bit scared about the stigma on vegans, especially in Italy, where vegans are not seen very well, and about telling our family, because as you might know, food is a very big deal in Italy for families, especially for traditions. And so in a way, for me, going vegan was kind of like, finally I can have the products that I want to eat, I can live the lifestyle that I want to live. As opposed to having to consume other products or accept eating other products when being with family that I didn't really feel happy having.
Bianca, can I just ask a couple of questions just before I sorry, Giulio, but I'm just super interested in a couple of bits. So if it's okay, I just want to dive into it. So I'm really conscious when I'm in this sort of, I'm in the sort of quote unquote vegan bubble, if you like. I speak to a lot of vegans, with the podcast and so on and so forth. And you can you surround yourself with that kind of bubble.
Yeah.
And as a result, you speak to people from all different walks of life, and one of the groups of people I often speak to is like nutritionists, doctors, people in that kind of space who talk about the health benefits of veganism and so on and so forth. Did the plan that you were subscribed, did it kind of work? And was the doctor who prescribed it, were they at all open to the idea of you not eating animal products?
So it worked at the time. I think the point was to kind of get me to eat very differently from what I usually ate, not specifically because of vegan products, but just like having a very different habit so that I could kind of like shock my metabolism. And this is a really, really great nutritionist that is Italian in Italy, of a slightly older generation. And again, there's still a lot of ignorance, I would say, about veganism in Italy. So even when I did go to get them to make a vegan plan for me, they kept insisting, but like not even egg, like once a week. And I'm like, they did say I understand about dairy, because I think dairy is really actually not very good for you.
Right.
And they're like, it's fine about meat. They were a little bit less happy about removing fish and eggs. And I remember that they asked a couple of times, and I was like, yes. And for me, it's quite hard sometimes in this situation to kind of like stand my ground, because I get a bit shy. So it was a bit awkward. But yeah, initially, I think veganism is still not very widespread, and there's still a lot of kind of like ignorance on the topic, and especially on the nutritional side. Like you would see, I have some friends that maybe have kids and they're vegan families, and so they're raising their kids vegan, and like they face a lot of backlash despite going to vegan nutritionists and like taking so much care for the kids' kind of like nutrition, more than the average parent, because you have to be hyper careful, and still they get so much backlash. So I know that veganism is actually one of the best options for the health as well, even though that wasn't necessarily what brought us to veganism. But I don't think that's really known initially, and I don't think most nutritionists are open to it yet initially.
Oh, it's fascinating. I definitely want to get more into like Italian culture and so on and so forth. I've had one experience that absolutely corroborates what you're talking about. When I went to Milan a few years ago and asked for something vegan, and what I got wasn't vegan.
I actually went to Milan, which is in cities it's a little bit better, because of course there's more tourism and maybe more vegans and things like that. I went to Milan last year, and we needed to find a place. My mom was working there, and we needed to find a place to eat after she finished working for our whole family. My sister struggled a little bit to eat kind of like gluten and things like that. So we needed to find a place that was okay for like omnivores, vegans, ideally gluten-free options. And that was close to where she was working. So I found this place, and it seemed quite good. It seemed like it had a few options. It seemed like they kind of like knew kind of like what each thing was. And so just to not ask 1,000 questions, just ask the waitress, can you tell me like which dishes are vegan? And she was like, vegan, maybe the Caesar salad? And I was like, it's fine. I'm just going to go for hummus. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, fascinating stuff. Giulio, how about you? What was your journey into veganism like? I imagine there was some real parallels with Bianca's, but yeah, it'd be good to hear.
I guess in many ways it was very similar to Bianca, because we were already living together and eating together, I would say, every meal already. So the journey was very similar. As Bianca said, I did start maybe a bit before Bianca, just because she was on that like eating plan kind of diet, so she had to eat very specific things while I didn't. I never really liked meat particularly, or dairy or eggs. I've never been really enthusiastic about these products. So for me it was great. Something interesting about me, like my favorite food in the world is lentils. I would eat lentils like every day. So for me it wasn't a big shock. I've always been into these kind of things. And just basically when Bianca was eating that things, I just literally hated it. Just like the smell, having them in the house. It was really a struggle. I really enjoyed having like my own diet and my own things, and since then we've really like never looked back, and and loved it ever since.
Forgive me if I've missed the chronology, but had you both moved over to the UK by this point? Or were you still
yes,
in Italy?
So we moved to the UK in 2016, I think. 2016, right. And we started the business in 2018.
Sure.
And we went vegan in 2018, so late 2018. The business was started in February 2018, and we went fully vegan, I would say October 2018. Right. Roughly. So that's the timeline. So we had been living in the UK for over a couple of years already. We were already kind of living in a bit of a vegan bubble at the time, which was great. And it is something that I think both of us really love about living in the UK. That we still do live in an amazing vegan bubble. Like most of the people we know are very similar in that to us, which is great. And I always think that, for example, like both of us coming from Italy, like in Italy, you couldn't have that kind of bubble. Like it wouldn't exist. And it's amazing to live in a country where you have so many options, especially right now that we live kind of because of the business. And we'll talk about it, I guess, more in depth later. But because of the business, we live between Cambridge and the Netherlands mainly. And both countries are amazing for vegan food. And we really love that. There are like two countries where if you feel like having kebab or sushi or anything, you will find a vegan version of it. And that is just amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard very good. I've not actually been to the Netherlands since being vegan, but I've heard very good things about their sort of their vegan options over there.
And the variety is just amazing. Literally, you can find anything you can think of. You would find a vegan version. It just makes it so easy, even for people that are not normally vegan, just like to reduce their intake of animal products. It just makes it so easy because you find really valid, high quality, easy to access alternatives, and that's really great.
It sounds like for both of you that the sustainability piece has obviously been a passion for a long time, and there's been a massive crossover with that and veganism. Was the kind of initial seeds of inspiration for veganism, was it always about sustainability, at least in the first instance for both of you?
I think for both of us was mainly sustainability, because we did so since our undergrad we were really interested in sustainability. And we came to the UK for our masters. I did my masters in 2016, and Bianca started in 2017. And both of us studied basically sustainability and environmental policy. So we're both really interested in sustainability. And in our studies, we basically came to realize, and that's something that I guess like every person that studies these things, at some point you come across data on the impact of like animal agriculture and meat heavy diets, and you just see the numbers and see how detrimental it is to the environment, and how very little changes can cut very dramatically greenhouse gas emissions and other forms of pollution. And I think both of us thought, like, if you could achieve that level of change with such a small personal change, because if you think of the marginal impact of switching from dairy milk to oat milk in terms of taste, it wouldn't be a huge impact. But for example, from an environmental point of view, it would be a huge impact. And then there are so many other sides to it, but that's just one. And both of us, I would say, approached it first through the sustainability point of view. But from there, we kind of got really interested in the whole movement, and it just became. We just became interested in every side of it over time. But yeah, that was definitely the first step for both of us.
Yeah, I would say that sustainability was definitely the thing that brought us to reduce our animal products consumption. So to switch to oat milk very early on. We were still eating some dairy products, but at the same time, we were also eating vegan cheese for a long time. And things like that. So I do think that was the thing that triggered wanting to reduce our animal products consumption and being mostly plant-based. But then I think going from mostly plant-based to vegan was more about kind of like the animal rights side.
Right.
Because I do think from a sustainability point of view, mostly plant-based, we're honestly eating, I would say, like 80% plant-based, would have been potentially like, pretty good from a sustainability point of view. But I do think that definitely suits to going fully vegan, and also not just plant-based diet, which is very good, but like not exactly the same thing as being fully vegan.
Yeah.
I think the ethos and the philosophy and the lifestyle was most of going vegan was definitely, I think, for me, and I think for Giulio as well, mostly for the like ethical and animal rights side.
And if I can add something that I think people sometimes forget when we talk about veganism and why people get into veganism, is that it's so much more than a diet, of course, and the community that you find is just amazing. Like all of the people we hang out with and that we got to know with the business, we just found a lot of like really amazing people and a great community of people that stuck with us over the years. And yeah, we just really loved the whole community and the whole movement around it.
Yeah, I definitely think that for me, one of the things that was kind of like the obstacle at first was that I had this idea of the stereotype of the angry vegan. And that can happen, but I think it's a very small part of the vegan community. It's obviously very loud, which is a problem. And not just loud, but also that sometimes, you know, people tend to remember the bad more than the good. So if you know 99 vegans that are just like really kind and nice people, and then, you know, one vegan that is just like shouting at everyone, and not doing just activism, which is great, but actually just being an angry person. And usually those people are angry at other vegans as well. Then people are going to remember that one person. And then I think during my master, a few people were already vegan in my course. And then I think by the end of the year, a few other ones, including me, went vegan. And I think meeting kind of like a few more vegans and getting to know a few more vegans and kind of like chatting with them and asking questions really helped me to realize that stereotype is not very representative of the vegan community.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that is interesting about me that Giulio was mentioning, that he really likes lentils and beans and stuff like that. I was not like that. I was a huge, despite being lactose intolerant, I was a huge cheese lover, and I really, really liked always my whole life red meat. And these two things were also two things that I shared a lot with my mom, who also really loved red meat and also really liked cheese, which I think was, again, a bit an obstacle for me at first because it felt like I was kind of like betraying that. But I was a huge vegan, like a huge cheese lover, and I used to love meat. And despite that, not regretted anything once. I will never go back. So, you know, there's different people, and I think there's hope for everyone. I always say, if I can go vegan, I'm sure that anyone that wants to can.
And 100%, it's getting easier and easier, right? So, well, depending on where you are, but certainly in the UK and Amsterdam and Netherlands, by the sounds of it, also getting easier and lots of options and so on and so forth. Even if your palate is not quite as attuned to lentils as Giulio's. You mentioned earlier, Bianca, about a bit of nerves around the talking about it with your family and sharing the kind of journey you were on and so on. For both of you, how did that land when you sort of finally kind of, it sounds like sort of almost like, you know, coming out of a closet, but like, you know, when you finally said, honestly, do you know what, this is how we eat now and this is how we live? Literally,
as someone that after being vegan came out as bisexual, it was harder to come out as vegan to my family than the second one. Because food, again, sometimes people always make fun of like Italians getting angry at food. But I think what people sometimes don't understand is that food is a really big part of our cultural identity, and also kind of like how you share, in a way, love. So we usually always have meals all together at the table. It's considered quite rude to have something different at the table from what everyone else is eating, and like sharing family recipes or cooking together or preparing meals together is a really big part, I think. And also just like cooking things that you love for people that you love is a really big part of our social interactions as well. And so, yeah, when I told my mom, she did kind of like freak out a little bit. We used to make together like Christmas dinner and stuff like that. So at first she had a very, very strong negative reaction. But after that initial reaction, she's been amazing. Also because she actually loves vegetables. So most of her meals would basically be a vegan meal, and then maybe she puts some cheese on the pasta, or she eats something on the side. So when I go back to Rome, for most of the meals, she doesn't even have to change that much. She just adds the cheese to her pasta in her plate instead of on the main bowl. And she eats basically actually more of the things that she likes because she loves vegetables than before, because I was quite a picky eater. So in the end, at the beginning, I think for me it was a bit hard with my mother's reaction not being a bit, I would say, excessive. But I know where it was coming from. It was coming from the fact that we shared a lot of things that came through foods that were not vegan together. But after that, it's actually been really nice. And we couldn't go for Christmas to Italy in the end this past year in 2021. But when we were planning to, she was planning to do a mostly vegan dinner. So there will be also non-vegan things for part of the things, but most of the things will be vegan, so that we could all have the same food or like planning together what to eat. And it was quite nice.
That's really fascinating that actually what your mum was nervous of was losing the connections, the family ties, the memories almost, rather than worried about your health or thinking that, you know, ethically it was the wrong decision or any of these kind of things. It was like, I get all of that, but the family stuff is crucial, and it's just great to hear like that being overcome as well. I think that's really, you know, hopefully if people listening are in the same kind of boat, I guess pinning it down to the fact that it's the family bit that is the loss, and actually that can be overcome.
Yeah, definitely.
Just you know, I think it's a great story.
Yeah, and I think
on you, Giulio?
Yeah, I think on my side, it was more of what we were talking about. It was more of the health side, because I think I didn't have the same kind of thing with my family where food was such an important thing. It is definitely like an occasion to like spend time together, but it was always less about the food and more about just like hanging out with the family. So I feel like most of my family didn't really care that much, but my mom, whom I'm really close with, she was really worried about my health, and I guess sometimes she still is, even though like could do like blood tests like even regularly just like to show them that I'm okay, like I'm doing great, my health is perfect. But yeah, sometimes she still worries about my health, and every time I have the slightest health issue, like I'm not feeling well for like 2 days, it's like, yeah, maybe you should eat some red meat. Like that's probably not the solution. But yeah, and I feel like my family, what was a bit different is that I think they never really like understood. And that's definitely something that I have worked on and tried to get them to understand. But I think they still think and see me being vegan as, I don't know if it's something about social pressure, but basically what they think is that if I was in a dark room by myself, I would eat meat. That's what they think. It's like if no one's looking, I would eat meat. And I try to get them to understand, like, that's not the thing. Like, if I was the last person in the world and I was alone, I would still not eat meat. Like, that's not the reason why I'm not eating meat. It's not because I don't want people to see me eating meat. And that's something that they have struggled on. And still sometimes it was like, maybe you want an egg? Like, I want to look. Like, and
I won't tell any of your friends.
Exactly, I won't tell them. And they still try. But I think I was worried as well before going vegan, because as Bianca was saying, it is definitely frowned upon in Italy. Wherever you go, it's not as easy, and the social stigma is massive. It's completely different from countries like here, the Netherlands, where it's seen as a more normal kind of progressive thing, but still like normal thing. In Italy, like, we've been like insulted in restaurants like multiple times.
Wow.
When you ask for a vegan option. Like, we were once with Bianca in a pizza place. This is a fun story. A pizza place near my hometown. So I come from a small town on the East Coast, very conservative area. Not the best for vegans, definitely. And we went to this pizza place. They had loads of vegan options, not marked as vegan, but like just like white pizza with no sauce, or like just a tomato pizza and something. And we didn't say anything. And my mom said mentioned that we were vegan, and the waitress said something like, Like my cousin used to be vegan as well, but then she had to stop because we're not meant to live that way. Stuff like that.
Right.
Basically saying that it's not healthy and we're not just meant to live like that. And yeah, you do see that thing a lot in Italy, that you kind of get insulted, people get mad. And that's funny about the stereotype of like the angry vegans, that is really a thing in Italy. Like people imagine vegans as this like angry people always complaining about everything. And from our experience, it was quite the opposite. It's usually whenever you go, and if you ask, do you have something that is like suitable for vegans, people will literally like shout at you and be very mad about it, where you literally just ask if you have something for vegans. So the stereotype seems to definitely go the other way around. But yeah, I would definitely tell people like not to worry too much about families. And in our cases, there are two very different families, and they still got around to accepting it and understanding it. And it's been a few years now, but I don't really feel any pressure anymore. Like when I go home, I know there's going to be something for me in most cases. If not, I'm just going to make something for myself and eat something very simple and plain. But it can be an obstacle, but it's usually not a huge one, I think. Like people will understand.
I totally relate to that idea that every time you have the slightest cold or anything wrong with you at all,
definitely, like you're vegan, so
it must be that. And as if eating a steak or something is going to be some kind of magical elixir that will prevent you getting colds. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Such an odd mindset.
And I mean, of course, I'm not a medical expert, but we've been vegan for years now. And literally every time with Bianca and I did any health checks, any blood tests, it's always been like, you're in perfect health. Everything is completely perfect. So, I mean, like, what can I say? Like, I think we follow a plant-based diet, and we're in really good health and have really no reason to believe that it wouldn't be great for our health. And we do feel much better than we did before. And so, yeah, I mean, from the evidence we see on ourselves, it is great for our health as well.
And I think also we're not necessarily the healthiest vegans, in the sense that...
Oh, me neither.
Yeah, like we do like our, vegan substitutes. We're not always like super careful. We do take supplements. We take a multivitamin and for vegans, and then like an omega-3. But apart from that, we're not, between work and everything, it's like we're not spending a lot of time thinking what we eat and how balanced we eat, and we've still been completely fine. I've actually donated blood 2 weeks ago, and they were checking my iron, and they were like, "Oh, this is perfect. This is like really, really good iron levels." I was like, I don't even take iron supplements.
Well, there you go. I mean, proof's in the pudding, right? I love that. I want to get onto Zero Waste Path, but I have a question, I guess, that probably surrounds it and leads into it a little bit, but it's just a question around your kind of formal education in the sustainability piece. I ask because I'll ask this question first, and then I'll sort of give you a bit of the context for why. So I'm interested as to whether veganism or plant-based diets or anything surrounding diet was something that was squarely talked about in those kind of formal settings. And I ask for the reason that whether I've spoken to kind of doctors, people who've been through similar kind of education paths as yourselves in terms of sustainability, wherever I see formal education, even if there is a very clear direct link with plant-based diets, it almost is either at best skirted around or at worst flatly denied by those kind of institutions that there is any positive link with veganism or plant-based diets in the case of nutrition and so on.
Yeah, actually,
was that your experience?
Yeah, no, it was not very much. It was mostly, I think, the people you're with and like your kind of like classmates more than the actual institution. I think one of my courses was on climate change, specifically kind of like from a scientific point of view, and then there was a lecture on how to reduce kind of like your impact or different pathways to reduce emissions. And when they talked about animal agriculture, the things they came up with were killing cows sooner so they have less time to have emissions, breeding specific types of cows that basically just fart a little bit less.
Uh-huh.
And just a lot of like really weird solutions where
Yeah.
you just like not eat them. So I think it was mostly the environment we both found in university of like meeting other vegetarian and vegan people, and then kind of like through that, and I think a lot also through the zero waste movement, more than the actual, at least for me, more than the actual university talking about kind of like reducing or cutting out animal products from your diet.
Yeah, I think I did feel the same about that. So during my master's here at Cambridge, when I first got here, it was a master about basically sustainability and environmental policy, and I did expect people and everyone involved to have like a different view on these things and a different like openness about these things. But basically, whenever you talk about reducing emissions, even more so a few years ago, people never wanted to talk about diets and how diets are a really important part of reducing emissions. I found that people are very into talking about plastics, for example, which is very relevant to our business as well.
Yeah.
But it's much easier to tell people don't use plastic or reduce your plastic use or single-use plastics. But diets have always been a more controversial, for some reason, debate. Something very funny I've seen, like every time I went to like university events and stuff like that, there would never be anything vegans, like any vegan options. I remember once, my first year of my PhD, we went to like a department event, and my department, like most people work on like climate change and similar topics. And there were no vegan options, like nothing at all in the whole place. And we had to eat like bread and tomatoes, like both Bianca and I were literally like sitting down eating like just bread and with a few tomatoes.
I would like to point out the tomatoes were decorative.
Yeah, they were decorative, and it was basically what we managed to eat that day. And that I've always found that surprising, but I think in the past few years it's something that has become mainstream in like universities and like more institutional settings as well. There is a research group at Oxford that works on this, mainly like impact of diets on reducing emissions, and there's a lot of peer-reviewed literature right now on how changing diets basically is very important to reducing emissions, and I think it is growing and becoming a bit more mainstream. But I feel like in institutional settings, like people and everything tends to be very traditional still, and people don't seem to want to talk about these things.
This episode of the Bloody Vegans podcast is brought to you by Veg1 from the Vegan Society. Veg1 is the nutritional vitamin and mineral supplement designed for vegans by vegans. Launched back in 2005 and rebranded in 2021 with a fantastic new plastic-free package, Veg1 provides nutritional support alongside a healthy and balanced vegan diet, all for an affordable price. With a 6-month supply available for just £12.70, Veg1 will cost you little over £2 a month and offers EU nutrient reference values, or NRVs, of vitamin B12, D3, iodine, selenium, B2, B6 and folic acid. Veg1 is chewable, it's affordable and reliable, you can take it once a day, it's available in fantastic orange and blackcurrant flavours, super easy and convenient, completely plastic free. So why not head over to vegansociety.com, search for Veg1 and take your next healthy steps into the world of veganism. Is it like it's an easier message to not talk about it? So we'll stick with plastic straws because people can get their heads around that.
Yeah, and even I mean, like it's a very complex thing to talk about. But I've seen like writing and working in this field that it's very easy for both people and politicians to try and blame big corporations, which are definitely to blame. But there is a tendency to focus all the blame on one party and trying to move attention away from individual choices just because it's difficult to tell people what to do or what to eat. People don't usually like that. So they tend to shift blame on the one side just to, Yeah, you do see that a lot, but I think it is changing, and it's becoming more understood that it's important to blame is to blame, but it's also important to try and do what we can, especially if it's small things that do have a really big impact. But I do think it is changing.
The way I see it is that it is the kind of like business world and the corporations and the government that are the ones that have the main responsibility, because they have the most power to create change, and very often having change at an individual level is not necessarily accessible or possible if the rest of these things don't really happen. So the way I see it more is that at an individual level, it's not necessarily you should feel blamed, but more that you should feel empowered to make decisions. And like the blame is still most definitely where the power is, but then you can feel empowered in actually making changes that do make a difference. For example, with zero waste, when I moved to the UK, again, like a little bit over 5 years ago, I joined the Journey to Zero Waste UK group, and we were, I think, around 60 people. And it was the first zero waste shop in the UK that just opened. I think it was in Devon. And now today you see supermarkets talking about reducing plastic and thousands of zero waste businesses and shops. And the group, I think the last time I checked, had 40,000 people. So individual changes do make a difference. And yes, individuals are not the ones that have the most responsibility, but you still have some power, because both politics and businesses in the end are interested in doing something that satisfies their customers or their voters. So when they see a shift, then they will follow. And they shouldn't be the ones to follow. They should be the ones taking the lead.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's a huge hope of that happening quickly enough. I also necessarily would prefer corporations to not be part of the sustainable future. But we do, as individuals, have the option to make changes. Of course, not everything, not everyone, but there will always, I think, be some things that you can do that are easy for every lifestyle and every person. So even if you can't do everything, especially, for example, when it comes to zero waste, I don't like the idea that zero waste means actually not creating any waste. I think zero waste is more about the way you approach things. It's more about, again, a philosophy in a way. So regardless of how much physical waste you create at the end of the month or at the end of the year, you can have a zero waste approach to things, which means just like wondering when you really need something, trying to see if there's a better option that is available in your area or in your budget. It doesn't mean having to do everything perfectly. And so I do think that as individuals, we do have always power to do certain things, and they can be different, and the amount of things that you can do can be different for each person, depending on what is your situation. But I feel like sometimes the conversations around climate change and sustainability are catastrophic, which they should be, but don't put much effort or enough effort on what you can do to not feel so powerless, to not feel so kind of abandoned into just like inevitable horrible future.
Absolutely. Like you're so right that I think that just that kind of the kind of sense of impending doom that comes with some of the messaging around that, whilst it is absolutely required to some extent, that it can have the impact of sort of feeling quite paralyzing to folks. Well, what's the point in me going vegan? What's the point in me reducing my waste? Because there's far bigger forces at play that I can't control or can't influence. And I think if you hear something that's a threat to us, we have kind of two options with it, right? We can either throw our hands up and say, well, there's nothing we can do, or we can sort of positively look at what we can do. And so, yeah, I'm with you on that. I think you may as well, if that's the view, then why not do everything you can?
Yeah. There was actually a really fun meme, I don't know exactly how to call it, that was going around for a while on social media. That was basically, I don't remember it word by word, I have a terrible memory, but it was basically around someone talking to like a bunch of people at like a conference or something like that, and they were like, but what is the point of like reducing our emissions and doing things more sustainably and blah blah blah, blah if maybe it's going to be all for nothing? And it's like trying to point out the fact that yes, even if you do these things and maybe they're not going to be enough, but you're still going to have improved, you're still going to have done things that are better. And this, I think, was mostly talking about climate change denial, where like even if you don't believe in climate change, you know, if we rely more on renewable energy, then we're going to have more energy in the future. We're going to have more energy independence. If we have more sustainable and local options, that's still going to be better for the local economy. It's still going to be a smarter way to use our resources. Like, might as well do it.
Yeah, 100%. Let's talk about zero waste path, because we feels like we're kind of there. Like, so how did you both go about founding the business, and what is zero waste path for folks who've not come across you both?
Well, so basically, first of all, Zero Waste Path is a small brand producer maker of zero waste toiletries and, let's say, hair care and body care products. What we try to do differently with Zero Waste Path, since when we started, we tried to create products that were fully sustainable, fully transparent from the very beginning of the production process to the way they're shipped. So it's not just a nice soap packed in a nice like cardboard packaging, but the whole process is thought and designed in a way to make it as sustainable as possible. So for example, one nice example is when we order ingredients, let's say coconut oil, we receive it in this like we receive some ingredients in buckets, in this like white plastic buckets. And what we do is that we just empty them, use them, wash them, and then send them back or bring them back to our supplier, and they just reuse them and send them again. So basically there's no waste created in the way we receive ingredients. So that's what we try to do differently at Zero Waste Path. And the way and then Bianca can probably say more about it, but the way it started, it was very strange year in 2018. I was kind of working on and off. Bianca was doing her master's, and I feel like both of us wanted to try and do something different with our lives in a way. And we had this strange idea of trying to make soap. So we started looking into it, got a few books, and we started reading about it, and we were very interested in the whole process. So at some point we decided, let's just go and try and create this small business. We started with all of the savings we had at the time, and they were like £200, and like a £800 like loan from Bianca's mom for like safety assessments. With this like very small investment, we started our business, produced our first batch of soap, which was like 24 soaps, I think, or 20 soaps. And from then we started growing like very slowly and very organically. And over time that we moved, at the time we were living in Edinburgh, and we started in our kitchen using a spare bedroom as like soap storage. And then we moved to Cambridge when I started my PhD, and we rented a house with a garden shed. And we used the shed for around a year, producing everything in the shed. And after a year, the business was big enough to move into a business unit. So then we rented a business unit, which is where Bianca is. And then a year after, we rented the one I'm in. And last year, we also started a small office in the Netherlands, where we ship to the EU. So after Brexit, we were having quite a few problems with like international shipping. So we started another small office in the Netherlands that we used to basically ship around Europe. And yeah, if Bianca wants to add something about what we do and why we do it.
Yeah, so at the time we had been trying to leave zero waste for around 2 years. So we already were making some of our own products. We, of course, needed to expand the range a little bit more if we wanted to sell to other people, because one soap, one shampoo, and one deodorant wasn't enough. And also because we were, like, at the time we hadn't really thought about potentially selling wholesale to stockists. We did want to have a bit of a slightly bigger range so that people could get several products from us, as opposed to having to buy something from us and something from someone else, etc., and having several shipments. But yeah, we I would like to say we got a loan from my mom, €800, so a little bit less, because for cosmetics you need these cosmetic safety assessments, which are like 10 pages long, like chemistry reports on your recipe, whether it's in line at the time with EU cosmetic laws, which are actually still the same as the UK, so now it will be like UK as well separately. Which are necessary to sell cosmetics, or not even if you give away cosmetics for free to anyone, like basically anytime you release cosmetic products, which would be from soap to makeup to moisturizers, anywhere to the public, to ensure that they're safe, you need to have safety cosmetic assessments, which are quite expensive. And we looked at getting a loan at a bank, but we couldn't get in the UK because we hadn't lived here long enough. And we tried to get at an Italian bank, but they were like, the main one they would give, I think, was like €2,000 and like crazy interest rates. So my mom in the end accepted to loan us the money that we repaid back in the first 10 months, like if it was a normal loan, paying monthly. But I like that we were able to start without having to have a huge investment. I think that was one of the big opportunities we had in the UK, where things, I think, a little bit more small business friendly from that point of view. And then, for the first year that we were in Cambridge, Giulio was starting his PhD. I was doing all the products on my own from the shed, and then slowly took over the rest of the house. And then we moved to the unit, which was a really, really big change. We hired our first employee, and that's when things started to improve a little bit, because the year that we're working from home and the half a year before that in Edinburgh, to be honest, it was quite tough. We were trying to get the business to a more sustainable, like human sustainable point for us as well, as quickly as possible, so that we could, get an income and maybe like work normal hours. And so that year we did often work 7 days a week, or 6 or 7 days a week. And so it was quite tough mentally, and especially because it was so intense, we didn't have a lot of time for social life. And so between the amount of work, the lack of time for a social life, it was quite tough mentally. And things improved when we moved to the business unit. And then, of course, last year was a bit of a difficult year between Brexit and COVID. I think it was quite a tough year for everyone, businesses, people. So we did open this space in the Netherlands, because otherwise we would have had to basically abandon the EU market, and we didn't really want to do that, especially as European immigrants. It felt really weird to not be able to sell to our own country anymore. Like literally our families wouldn't be able to get the products except when we went back to Italy in person. But I would say for us, the thing was, because we were sustainable customers, the idea was kind of like how to create what would be our dream business for us, the dream products for us. And I think that was really helpful to already be part of that world as customers. And has often been helpful because we do know the sustainability, zero waste, and vegan movements from personal experience as well. But we just try to, we're nowhere near perfection. We do still create waste. There are still things we wish we could do differently. You have limited options and sometimes limited resources. But the point for us was to always try to be equally sustainable and ethical behind the scenes as with the final product. And so that's why I'm trying to do things low waste, trying to find local suppliers, being a certified real living wage employer, because that's a big part of sustainability people sometimes forget, is the social rights side and the human rights side. And so having fair working conditions, I think, is a very essential part of that.
And also, I think being real and transparent about what it means to have a business and what it means to be a sustainable business. Because I think sometimes brands try to only show the nice side, the final product, the cool sustainable product. And we wanted to kind of break that cycle a bit and show what's behind it, how we receive ingredients, how we try to become more sustainable and find more sustainable ways to do things. Still in an imperfect way, trying to be real and show people what it means to try and be a sustainable business these days, where you work in a system that kind of works against you, because it's extremely hard to be a sustainable business, even with like growing awareness and things that are slowly changing, but it's still very hard. Whenever you order something, you have to like try and in every possible way and email them and try to get them to send things plastic free is always extremely hard. You always have to like take responsibility for like if anything happens to the shipment and there's no plastic, then you have to be fully responsible because you asked to have it without plastic. There are like so many little things involved. But yeah, we wanted to have a business that was our dream business. So we really do things, and all the people we work with, we all do things the way we want a zero waste product to be. So there's a real effort in every step of the way. If there's anything we can do to go like the extra mile to make something a bit better, we always do it. We never compromise on like the quality of ingredients or the way we manufacture things. As Bianca was saying, like living wage and trying to have our employees treated in the best possible way and have them as happy as we possibly can. And yeah, that's what we always try to do. With zero waste fat.
Well, kudos to you both. What an incredible mission to set up yourselves on, and you know, I think it's really interesting when you talk about the holistic sense of this sort of zero waste movement and sustainability and so on, and thinking about sustainability not just from the end product, but the full supply chain, all the humans involved in the supply chain, including yourselves, including any employees. And I think that's really fascinating, and I imagine it's a very competitive space, because telling that story and helping people to understand that in a world of big companies who are greenwashing and ultimately saying, here's the end product and isn't it great, and the buzzword of sustainable, without the meaning behind it, it must be really tough to make sure that you're telling that full story to your potential kind of customer base, if you like. How has that been for you?
Yeah, I think that it is very hard to communicate what you are, what you do, and why sometimes prices are higher than people would like. But something Bianca and I always agreed on is that we didn't want to have a sustainable product that, to be sustainable and low price, we would have to like exploit people or take shortcuts. We never wanted to do that. So we always tried to create a product that is sustainable, but every other thing about it is as good as the sustainability aspect. We always thought that for a product to be sustainable, it cannot exploit people, it cannot take shortcuts, it cannot use bad ingredients. And yeah, that's what we try to do. It is very hard as you were saying, it's a very competitive world. A lot of businesses are entering, let's say, the zero waste sustainability market. You have a lot of greenwashing of businesses that literally just get a product the exact way it was 10 years ago, and they just put it in like a cardboard or like unbleached cardboard wrapper, and that's sustainable. And that does happen, especially with like bigger brands that enter the sustainability market, just because it's a growing sector and there's more money in it than there was years ago. And that's always a big challenge. But yeah, Bianca, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that in the UK, in some ways, well, the past year has been hard, but on average, compared to our experience in Italy, I think there's a bigger push to supporting local economies and local businesses. So sometimes I find that's a little bit better in the UK. But it's definitely hard because, well, on one side, maybe what we have realized, what we know, is that we're not maybe always the best at portraying the message in the most effective way, because I am a bit, I talk a lot. I get lost in details. I'm a person that loves lists and things like that. So sometimes maybe there's too much information that we share at once to make it really easily like understandable. But also, like, not everyone. I think the zero waste world people will be on average more interested in knowing more about like the process in the business and all of the things, and will do more research. as opposed to like impulse buys and stuff like that. But maybe a lot of, still a lot of people want. And so maybe the thing that makes you different doesn't always come across.
Yeah.
Luckily, if I can say, I do think our products are good quality. So, and we've had good feedback on actually how they work and the quality. So very often that's more the drive for most people. But yeah, I find one of the things I actually find quite interesting is that we have these solid shampoos that I developed 2.5 years ago, approximately. And a lot of people have told us, like, yeah, with shampoo bars, it can be quite hard. So they were saying, like, yeah, oh, this is so much better than other shampoos I've tried. And I know why that might be, because there's different types and some are harder to use than others. But some people have also told us this is the best shampoo I've ever used, compared to liquid ones as well. And apart from, of course, being very pleased, I found that quite interesting, considering, this is just me with no kind of like degree specifically on cosmetology on my own, trying to develop the products. I did 1 hour of consultancy to understand better which ingredients were truly sustainable, and that was it, against these huge companies that have entire research laboratories and so much money. And to be honest, I think that the reason why they're good is not because I'm a genius, but because we simply try to really use good ingredients. So for us, it's always about trying to balance quality, sustainability, which means also the ethical side, and final price. So when we can't really go too low on the price without having to reduce sustainability or quality, then what we try to do is creating products that either last a really long time or are multi-purpose, so that then kind of the total budget that you spend maybe in a year on your toiletries is a bit more similar to what you would have spent with kind of like conventional products. So that we do try to balance the three, but of course, right now, zero waste and sustainability are becoming very trendy. And so sometimes, you'll see a lot of big companies just jumping on the bandwagon and having not very good products in terms of formulation as well. Not really much about them being sustainable except for maybe the packaging. And of course, they have much more marketing money outlets that can really make them win on the market.
And something else I forgot to mention that is kind of newish and interesting about what we do is that all the products that come in a non-paper packaging, so for example deodorants that come in a tin, or our latest product are candles that come in a glass jar, with all of these products we actually want and incentivize customers to bring the packaging back. We can wash them, sterilize them, and use them again. We always thought there is really like no reason to just sell a deodorant in a tin and have that tin just being thrown away after one use. And we pay kind of, we pay customers back, giving them a discount if they return tins or jars. So we try to be circular in that way as well, trying to minimize the amount of like our packaging gets just wasted and thrown out.
Yeah, and the only reason we can't do that would because we've had sometimes customers asking if they could return the cardboard boxes, and the only reason we can't do that is that of course they cannot be sterilized and washed.
Yeah.
But with all of the other packaging, yes, you could be recycled. We do always use generally like glass, metal, or recycled cardboard, but recycling is still energy intensive, and you don't always know if it's going to happen. Even though with metal and glass, it usually happens more often, and paper as well. But reusing it directly, that's so much better.
Yeah.
And at the moment, we can't cover the cost of shipping the items back to us. So what we do is that we try to give cumulative discounts. So like if you return more than one, then you're gonna get a bigger discount. Some of our stockists also are part of the scheme, and so you can return the packaging to them and get a discount from them. So that we try to kind of incentivize it, so that even if you maybe have to pay for shipping, the discount you get back between the several packages will be higher than that, and things like that. Again, being a small business, we don't necessarily have the network to be able to maybe offer free returns and things like that, but we definitely believe in kind of like the circularity of packaging in this case, and that it's much better to just reuse it, even though it's a lot of work and not very economically like smart in some ways. Like, it's much cheaper to just like buy the packaging than to get it returned, give the discount, wash it, sterilize it. But we think it's worth it.
And it's funny, every time we go see stockists for different reasons, sometimes we end up in like our stockist shop, they always give us like these boxes of tins to bring back to even this like last fall we were in Italy and we visited a couple of our stockists, and both times they just loaded our van with with like tins to bring back. I mean, we're always happy to do it, and as Bianca was saying, it is a weird world where you actually incentivize not to do that. It's always cheaper to just throw it away and buy a new one. And I think that's where part of the problem is. Like, economically, it doesn't make a lot of sense, and that shouldn't be the case. But we're still like always happy to do it when we can.
You're fighting against the system that's not set up correctly, really.
Yeah,
you know, when you look at it.
I guess it's the same with like a lot of things. Like, if you think of like traveling on a plane versus a train, like that usually planes are like 1/4 of the price of a train trip, and that's just like a wrong system of incentives that just you're fighting against in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think this is very relatable for vegans, because so many times vegan products are more expensive because a lot of, for example, dairy products have actual economic incentives from the state that bring the prices down. And so I think it's quite relatable from an individual level as well. When you're trying to live sustainably or you're vegan, that you feel like you're constantly working against the system and fighting against the system. And it can be quite, I think, at times frustrating, because it's like, I'm literally doing what I'm supposed to do to make the future and the planet better for all of us, and then you feel like you constantly have everything against you. It's like, why? But again, I think it's important to focus on the results that you get, because I think it can always be a little bit overwhelming, both with veganism and sustainability, to then notice that the rest of the world sometimes can be a bit, not really listening to you. So we do try to focus on the results we have on our website, kind of like plastic bottles saved, which would basically be, we consider kind of like one plastic packaging for each item we have produced as plastic saved. So for example, a deodorant, it's a tin and usually would often come in a plastic tube, so it's not necessarily literally a bottle, but I'm usually a very big perfectionist, so I try to make it simple. And very often we'll probably save more than one bottle, like shampoo bars, but we try to say the minimum that we would have saved. And I think that can be really a big incentive for us, and we hope also for the customers to see that even as a really, really small business with relatively few customers compared to very big brands, we've been able to create a difference, and our customers have been able to create a difference. And I think that can be a really good driving force to continue against the system.
Yeah, 100%. Time is getting on, but I absolutely want to give you the opportunity to tell folks where to go about finding you at Zero Waste Path and picking up some incredible products the next time they're looking for shampoos and toiletries and so on and so forth. But one thing just really strikes me, and I'll just take the opportunity to say to both of you, the thought and care that's clearly gone into this series of products and this business is phenomenal. You can just sense it, that every angle has been thought about and considered from a sustainability standpoint, from an ethical standpoint, and as a potential consumer, it does fill me with confidence. I spoke with somebody recently who works in a vegan, or she founded a vegan creative agency, and we got onto this discussion point about exactly as we've just talked about here, but from the other side, from her point of view as in a creative agency, about how do you fight against the big guys who are quite happily either taking a subsidy in one place to make a product cheaper than a smaller company who's thinking about it from an ethical standpoint, or against somebody who's greenwashing in their messaging and has lots of advertising budget to throw at something. And she said something that sort of struck me, and it really resonated with talking to you both, is that, you know, they can copy like packaging, and they can copy the color scheme, and they can copy this, that, and the other. But what they can't copy is the attention, care, and detail that small businesses with the right ethics put into their business and into their products. That's just unduplicatable, if you like, by these big businesses. They don't want to, and they can't. They don't want to do it. They don't want to put the money into it. They don't want to put the time or attention in so that folks like yourselves are. So I just wanted to call that out and say I think you're doing an amazing work at Zero Waste Path.
Thank you. And without opening a huge other topic, because I know it's been a while already, I'm just going to put it there very quickly. That the reason why, as a consumer, I've changed my mind from the beginning of my zero waste journey to wanting a world exactly like it is today, but just like zero waste or like circular, to thinking that it's not really possible to have a sustainable or ethical future with big corporations, is pretty much what you were saying. That when, you know, with capitalism and like big corporations, like when your biggest focus and the drive and the most important thing of your business is to make the maximum amount of money and have the least amount of cost, you will never be able to have the most sustainable or the most ethical options, because those will not be the cheapest and they will not make you the most profit. So that's why I think from an ethical and sustainable point of view, it's not actually possible. And it's good when, you know, there's more options and it becomes more available. We all enjoy, you know, being able to stop on the motorway and have a burger at Burger King that is vegan. But in the end, long term, while we can enjoy the fact that some things are easier, I think it's important to remember that if we want things to be truly sustainable and ethical, I think the only way forward will be with local businesses and small businesses and businesses that actually truly care and put sustainability or veganism and ethicality, I don't know if that's a word, as the main focus. Because otherwise, you're never going to be able to have the maximum of those things if money has to be maximized and money making has to be maximized. And then I'm going to try not to go too far and start another conversation of an hour.
Not at all, Bianca. They couldn't have. I literally couldn't say that better myself. So I think you're absolutely right, and what a fantastic place to sort of close out. Where would we go about finding you both at Zero Waste Path and picking up some amazing products and so on and so forth?
So we have two websites, one for the UK, which is more probably useful, and one for the EU, and it's zerowastepath.co.uk or zerowastepath.eu if you're based in mainland Europe. But we are based in Cambridge, so if there's anyone that is local, you can always also order on our website and collect in person. And otherwise, we ship using Royal Mail.
Amazing.
Last thing, we have a map of all of our stockists. So if you go to our website, zerowastepath.co.uk, you will find a map with all of the businesses that stock our products in both UK and rest of the world. So if you go there, have a look, you might find some like local businesses that stock our products, so you can buy locally. And on the map, we also have the online ones, so that maybe they have collection, or you can ask them if you can collect, so that you can reduce emissions in that case as well. And all of our stockists are independent businesses, so if you support them and us, so you're supporting two small independent businesses.
Amazing. Awesome stuff. Well, look, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I totally get you are super, super busy. So thank you so much for your time. I'll put links in the show notes to everything we've talked about from a point of view of the EU site and the UK site and so on and so forth. And I'll put one specifically for the stockists and so on, because I think that's an important one for folks. I love that point about why not support two businesses at the same time. What a great idea. But thank you so much. That's all that's left for me to say.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. It was great to be here.
Thank you for having us. Yeah, thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Bye now.